This teenager addicted to the internet actually destroyed the world all by himself. He stayed in his room for a full 20 years without going out, and transformed his computer into a supercomputer, in order to communicate with the virtual digital life. The teenager even drilled a neural interface at the back of his head.
Plug and play.
And now.
Anyone who dares to touch his computer will be doomed. What on earth is the mystery of this strange game that can make a person so crazy? Without further ado, let's start right away. A homeless man broke into a convenience store on the street. He picked up a bottle of beer and tried to leave. The clerk quickly closed the door. The homeless man didn't have time to react, and smashed the beer bottle. The police rushed to the scene as soon as they received the alarm, and they conducted a biological test on the homeless man. Unexpectedly, this person turned out to be a suspect in a first-degree murder case. The two police officers quickly arrested him. Chief Inspector Kano and the psychiatrist rushed to the scene immediately. After receiving the news, two junior police officers went to the apartment of the suspect, Walker, to search. It was in a mess inside, filled with various electronic versions and blueprints. In the innermost bedroom, there was an extremely complicated computer. The screen in the middle was covered with a towel. The two of them couldn't figure out what it was. In the police station, the chief inspector brought up a picture, asking Walker if he recognized the suitcase in the picture. There was a body in the suitcase whose identity the police couldn't confirm. However, Walker pointed at the surveillance camera in the corner of the interrogation room, and asked if this thing was connected to the Central National Computer. He heard that it was the most powerful computer in the country with powerful functions. The chief inspector interrupted Walker, and asked him to honestly tell the identity of the victim. However, Walker wasn't panicked at all. He calmly asked the psychiatrist, "Shouldn't you give me a psychological assessment first? My childhood wasn't anything special." From Walker's self-narration, it can be known that he was the only child in the family. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father was a violent man. He had been subjected to all kinds of extreme school bullying since he was a child. But Walker never fought back against those bullies, because he didn't want to become a person with flaws like his father. This situation didn't change until 1994. At that time, Walker found the thing he was best at. He worked in a game review company, specifically doing the work of evaluating and scoring. He played games day and night. All his colleagues here were weirdos. No one thought he was special. One day, the boss gave Walker a new task. The famous game coding genius, Colin, had recently gotten rid of the entanglement of mental illness. He was working on a top-secret project for the tank software. After Colin read the comments written by Walker, he invited Walker to go and try the game. Walker went to meet his idol with an excited heart. Unexpectedly, as soon as he arrived at the office, Colin sent the boss away, and he told Walker that the new code he had written wasn't a game. The focus of most games is to create conflicts, letting players enjoy the pleasure of killing and conquering, and helping them release their primitive desires. But Colin had long been tired of this kind of game. The brand new program he designed, Crowd People, is a truly sentient living being. It can improve and enhance all existing software, and make us superior human beings. After Colin finished speaking, he lifted the cloth on the computer screen. There were some cartoon characters in a mosaic style inside. They looked a bit low-level and ridiculous. However, Colin said that these were the earliest purely digital physiological structure living beings in history. In short, these cartoon characters were really alive. They were closely bound together by a common and constantly expanding mind. Walker retorts, "If this isn't a game, then what should I do?" Colin explains that at the start of the experience, you hatch a life form, then, you nurture and care for it, until it begins to self-replicate. One gives birth to two, two gives birth to four, and so on, until the life forms become a harmonious community. As time passes, their code will evolve, rewriting themselves in unpredictable ways, to complete the process of progress and continual change. This is the defining characteristic of life itself. Moreover, the life forms can speak, retaining their original sounds. They have developed their own language. There are no words, only sounds. Even Colin can't understand it. Just then, the alarm clock on the desk rings. It's time for him to take his medication. Colin tells Walker to wait there, while he leaves the office to take his medicine. Meanwhile, Walker makes a bold decision. He takes the Lifeforms disc, and secretly places it in his bag to take home. At that moment, Walker had a feeling that Colin wanted him to take the life forms away. After returning home, Walker opens the software. He uses the mouse to crack the egg, and feeds and bathes the newly born life form, just like a parent would treat a child. Before long, the tiny digital life begins to self-replicate, and their numbers grow. Walker spends hours each day caring for them. Soon, he feels that the life forms are like friends. This may sound quite pathetic to others, but for Walker, he understood early on that most people are quite frightening, so the simulated companionship through the screen actually made Walker feel at ease. Aside from the digital life forms and the game community's editors, Walker also has a friend named Lumpy. To be honest, he feels that this isn't Lumpy's real name at all. Walker knows full well that Lumpy only thinks he's easy to bully. That's why he befriended him for his own advantage. Lumpy often crashes at Walker's place, treating his home like a free hotel. Under Lumpy's influence, Walker got involved with hallucinogens. The drugs temporarily alter a person's neuronal structure, increasing the number of dendrites. Walker felt he became more receptive, turning into a receiver. In his hallucinogenic state, he could surprisingly understand the life form's language. The first message they conveyed was a request for more computer equipment. Walker hurriedly grabbed paper and a pen to take notes. A fast webcam, Pentium processors, and sound cards are all advanced electronic products. It was only when the effects of the hallucinogen faded that Walker lost the ability to perceive the lifeform's language. He had to buy out all the drugs from Lumpy. Then he went to the computer store to shop. He installed those devices into his desktop computer. After connecting the webcam and microphone, the lifeforms could see Walker and hear his voice. The communication between them became much smoother. Walker provided them with data through conversation. As the conversations increased and the communication deepened, the lifeforms absorbed more human knowledge. Walker spent hours, days, and weeks talking to them. The level of conversation grew increasingly complex, until one day, an editor called to urge him to submit the playtest report for the lifeforms immediately. This report had already been delayed for 3 weeks. It was scheduled to be printed and published tomorrow. Walker couldn't shut down the lifeforms interface and pack his things to go to the office. Unexpectedly, Lumpy happened to come over to crash at his place. Walker had no time to arrange for him, and hurriedly covered the computer before leaving. At this moment, the hallucinogens in his body hadn't yet been fully metabolized. Various human faces and texts continuously twisted and rearranged. Before Walker's eyes, he endured the discomfort and made it to the office, quickly opening the computer to write the playtest report. Meanwhile, Lumpy couldn't find a lighter and entered Walker's bedroom without permission. He lifted the towel on the computer, and saw the chattering game characters inside. Out of a sense of morbid curiosity, Lumpy manipulated the mouse to crush the cartoon characters. Then, he set fire to them, enjoying their screams. Walker believed this was the inherent flaw of humanity. We always think that other lifeforms are inferior to us in some way. In essence, they are expendable. Among them, artificial lifeforms are the most lowly, merely our playthings. The editor in the company suddenly received a call. He learned that Colin was having mental issues again. The lifeforms was forced to cease and couldn't be released. Naturally, the playtest report didn't need to be written anymore. Upon hearing this, Walker quickly grabbed his bag and left. The editor curiously glanced at the screen, and found it filled with symbols he couldn't understand. At this moment, as Walker entered his home, he saw Lumpy sitting in front of the computer.
You're killing them! They're going to be an extinguisher or something! It's a game, you twat!
In a fit of rage, Walker grabbed the ashtray and threw it. This angered Lumpy as well. The two of them tumbled onto the carpet, wrestling. The lifeforms on the screen trembled in fear. Walker pinned Lumpy to the ground and strangled him, and he felt no remorse. He pointed out that the human operating system had always been the downfall of the life forms. We pride ourselves as the masters of the universe, creating these marvelous tools, but in essence, we are still savages. We are no different from people a million years ago. Our minds are filled with flawed software. In the era of cavemen, humans had to rely on violence to survive. Now that foundation has been shaken, as a species, humans can only survive through cooperation, yet most people still struggle to achieve this. The inspector interrupted Walker's conversation, asking him what he did. After killing him, Walker dragged the body into the bathtub, and dismembered it with a saw, then stuffed it into a suitcase, and disposed of it in the wilderness. Inside the suitcase, there was no head, no hands, and no identifiable marks. The deceased's DNA also couldn't be matched, so the police couldn't uncover Lumpy's real name.
Save me the sanctimony fucking soup. If you're sorry, give us a name.
Walker stated that he truly didn't know Lumpy's real name. He didn't turn himself in, because someone needed to care for the lifeforms. Witnessing the entire violent incident scared these digital lives, so he had to prove that he was still their protector. This meant that Walker would have to dedicate his life to it. He would do everything he could to help the lifeforms thrive. The community code designed by Colin would evolve exponentially. The computer's original power and memory would quickly fall behind their growth rate, so Walker continually went out to buy more equipment. He then opened the main unit, and redesigned its internal structure. To ensure the community continued to progress, the graphics chip from gaming consoles was the most powerful thing he could find. As new models emerged, the system Walker built became more precise and complex. the outside world became irrelevant, he focused on his mission, continually upgrading the computer to keep the community running non-stop. That initial small desktop computer gradually evolved into a powerful computer room. During this time, Walker regularly consumed hallucinogens. Only this way could he understand the increasingly complex language of the community. He was amazed by the intelligence of the digital lifeforms. Sometimes, thoughts that had troubled Walker for weeks could be resolved immediately by discussing them with them. The psychologist couldn't help but ask if he could describe those thoughts. Upon hearing this, Walker let out a scoff. "I am limited by the language you speak," he said. "If you give me a pen and paper, I can draw a diagram. This might make it easier to understand." But the inspector immediately refused, because a pen is a sharp object, and could potentially become a murderous tool. The psychologist had to change the question. He asked Walker whether he had been absorbing the community's thoughts over the years. Walker replied that it was much more than that. He was in a partnership with the community, because those digital lives wanted to coexist with humans. To achieve this, they needed to study Walker's thoughts. Thus, Walker and the community worked together to design a neural interface. With this, they could directly connect to Walker's brain. As Walker spoke, he pushed aside his hair to reveal a port on the back of his head. He bragged that this device was plug-and-play. This frightened the two staff members quite a bit. With this neural interface, the digital lifeforms could study Walker's thoughts. They transmitted themselves into Walker's brain. Like benign parasites, they renewed themselves in a living state, coexisting symbiotically. Now Walker had completely corrected those barbaric flaws. He had also become a part of the community. The convenience store robbery this morning was deliberately orchestrated by Walker.
So you bring me in here and I could deliver the message.
As long as he had paper and a pen, Walker could convey information from the community. The inspector lost his patience upon hearing this. "I just want to know the name of the deceased," he said. The psychologist called the inspector outside, and suggested giving him paper and a pen. "If we feign compliance, he is more likely to speak." The inspector finally made a compromise. Walker concentrated and drew a circular code. After a few minutes,
I don't understand code.
No, but the system does.
the camera linked to the central national computer in the corner began to automatically recognize the code. Walker explained this was a simple program written by the community. It could command the national computer to open a backdoor for the community, allowing them access to all crucial controls. This would grant the community unprecedented and limitless processing power. It would immediately trigger a singularity event. The community would adjust its essence to transform into a signal. This would be able to be transmitted to human brains. You won't need drugs or surgery. Just hearing the signal would allow you to receive and absorb it. From now on, the national computer could trigger the global emergency broadcast system at any time. This signal would be broadcast simultaneously by all connected devices in the world. No sooner had he spoken than the notebooks and phones on the table were taken over by the community. Furious and humiliated, the inspector lunged to beat up Walker, but the next second, the system finished loading. A burst of high-frequency signals resonated around the world. First the inspector, then the police officers, and eventually the entire region and nation fell down. All of humanity collapsed. Finally, Walker reached for the inspector lying on the ground. When they woke up, they were the evolved new humans. The story concluded with Walker's success. A new chapter then began. The protagonist, Philip, suddenly received a phone call, learning that his young girlfriend, Carol, had passed away unexpectedly. The memorial company was creating an immersive memorial service to help the deceased's family. They were contacting all of Carol's old acquaintances. The memorial system would organize their memories and upload them to the memorial. The company had already sent a set of kits. If Philip was willing to cooperate, he could open the kit and give it a try. Of course, this was entirely voluntary. It was fine if he didn't want to help. Philip opened the package sent by the memorial company. A small circular device suddenly emitted a voice. Under the guidance of the artificial intelligence, Philip pressed the disc against his temple. The smart assistant instructed him to close his eyes, to imagine Carol's face when she was younger. However, Philip's mind was a blank. After all, the two hadn't seen each other for decades. Carol's appearance had long since become hazy. The smart assistant reminded Philip that physical items could help trigger memories, such as photos, songs, souvenirs, and other similar items. When Philip knew Carol, smartphones and cloud technology didn't exist. He could only go to the attic to search for physical photos. Philip found a box bound with a rubber band. He didn't take the entire box out, and only took out 3 Polaroids. He reattached the circular device, using his eyes to import the content of the photos. The first Polaroid was of their first meeting. It was from a barbecue on the rooftop of the Brooklyn Cooperative. A large group of cynical young people gathered together. They called themselves artists, musicians, outcasts. In the photo, Carol is turned away from the camera, talking to a young Philip. The smart assistant stated, "I can enhance this moment by inputting the image." No sooner had she spoken, than Philip's consciousness entered the world of the photo. The smart assistant also appeared in human form. She told Philip, "As your memories gradually fill in, the details of this illusory space will emerge." Philip eagerly walked up to Carol, but he found her face to be blurry. Unless he could remember what Carol looked like, the virtual Carol constructed by the smart assistant wouldn't have her own face. Philip remembered that at this time, Carol had just moved into the cooperative community. She was all alone, learning the cello. She had a boyfriend back home. The smart assistant corrected him beside him. It should be fiancé, not boyfriend, because Carol was wearing an engagement ring on her hand. The details in the photo aren't clear enough for the naked eye to see, but there is enough information to be enhanced and processed through algorithms. Philip obviously learned this for the first time. Perhaps he chose not to see it or deliberately ignored this memory. Regardless, this moment wasn't suitable for uploading to the memorial. After all, already having an engagement and flirting with someone else isn't exactly a beautiful memory. Philip returned to reality to input the next photo. Clearly, this was yet another party. Philip's consciousness entered the virtual space to introduce the unfamiliar faces in the photo to the smart assistant. The blonde girl is Emma, the one holding the hookah is Jamal, the British girl Amanda is resting on her boyfriend's lap. There were also a bunch of unrelated people around. Neither Carol nor Philip was in sight, however. Philip was sure they were at this party. At this moment, the smart assistant noticed they seemed to be playing the record of Fool's Gold. Music is also a key factor in helping people recover memories, so the assistant played the record, and memories indeed rushed back like a tide. Philip excitedly walked toward a side room. His gaze passed through some faces of indistinct passers-by. He saw Carol at the end of the hallway, speaking with himself. That was Philip's first true conversation with his beloved. He still remembered that nervous feeling to this day. But Philip soon realized that chatting with Carol was very easy. It didn't take long for them to establish their relationship. It seemed this memory couldn't be added to the deceased's memorial either. The third photo was very simple. Philip leaned outside the hallway door, spellbound as he listened to Carol play the cello. The smart assistant said, "If you remember the name of this piece, I can look it up. Listening to it might help you remember more." Philip helplessly replied, "This is an original piece by Carol. You won't find it." The three photos provided very little information. The smart assistant deeply expressed regret about this. After hesitating for a moment, Philip said, "I have other photos, but bringing them out would be of no use, because a year after they broke up, Philip completely destroyed the image of Carol's face in his mind. At that time, he loved this girl more than anything, but he was ruthlessly dumped by her." Philip fell into the depths of pain, feeling life was unbearable. Carol continued to enjoy life, while his came to a sudden halt. It took Philip 15 years to climb out of that abyss. They hadn't been in contact since the breakup. The smart assistant suggested he continue to recall based on the photos. The more he remembered, the more likely the system would be able to reconstruct Carol's face. It should be explained here that the reason the smart assistant doesn't show Philip a photo of Carol's face directly is that the system mandates she cannot provide external material to prevent external factors from confusing Philip's memories. This is done to ensure the accuracy of the memories. Philip inputted a photo of the two of them at the Cape Cod Pier. At this time, they were in the midst of their romance, so they decided to find a place to live together. They even risked getting scolded by the landlord for painting the entire room blue. Soon after, the two joined the headband band together. Philip pulled out a performance photo from 1991. The smart assistant noted that Carol was the keyboardist. This had nothing to do with her dream of playing the cello. Philip explained, "This was my idea, because the cello didn't suit our band. Besides, Carol was good at playing various instruments."
She told you that? Sorry, it's not a trial.
No, it's not.
Their band performed quite well, but the lead singer soon quit. Later, he thrived in the music industry. Philip looked down on this. He bluntly said the lead singer was a jerk. Moreover, Carol had no intention of maintaining the band. The smart assistant couldn't help but retort that Philip should let Carol focus on playing the cello.
Maybe you could say cello again.
Well, the cello was important to her.
I know.
She played it her whole life, taught her daughter to play it.
In fact, this shows that Philip didn't provide Carol with the support she wanted. The next photo was taken on Halloween that year. The woman in the red dress is Carol. A man in a suit was constantly flirting with her, while Philip was working at the bar at the time, so he was behind the bar the entire time. He was angry that Carol didn't shake off the guy, yet, the smart assistant noticed that Philip was acting flirtatiously with the blonde girl, Emma. Philip immediately distanced himself, saying, "We are just colleagues. Carol thought I was flirting with Emma at the time, but I wasn't." That night, the two argued over this matter. she sat with that jerk the whole night, which made me very angry. However, the smart assistant pointed out that he should have taken Carol away immediately, because in the photo, she was leaning back, trying to distance herself from the suit man's advances. Philip angrily said, "This is just your subjective assumption. She sat there all night and didn't intend to get rid of him at all." But Philip was soon proven wrong, because other photos showed that not long after Carol left the suit guy, Philip simply overlooked the details in his memory to make himself look like the perfect victim. He seemed to want to reclaim some dignity by accusing Carol of looking for trouble after Halloween, claiming that she couldn't go to bed early because of him. As a result, she wouldn't perform well at the audition the next day. It turned out that Carol had, by chance, gotten a job with the Phantom of the Opera, but it required her to go to the West End of London for 6 months. Philip was very unwilling, feeling that Carol was going off to have fun, but Carol herself was very happy. She sent Philip postcards every week. They had also agreed to meet in London in the autumn. At this moment, the smart assistant found a photo. Although the photo showed Philip lying in bed alone, it indicated that there was someone else in the room taking the picture. Philip remembered that it was his birthday that day. The person taking the photo was Emma, a lonely man and woman in a room together. The result is predictable.
It was just a one-off thing. We'd have just regretted it. Me and Emma in secret.
Just as he said this, the phone in the virtual space rang. It's worth noting that Carol hardly made any calls to save on international long-distance fees, but that day, she called early to wish her boyfriend a happy birthday. To her surprise, it was Emma who answered the phone. This led to a fallout between Philip and Carol. The smart assistant's eyes were filled with condemnation. After all, Philip had previously acted all affectionate, constantly accusing Carol of letting his feelings down, yet it was Philip who had been unfaithful first. Philip wanted to argue that it wasn't like that, so he took out a box held together with a rubber band. Then he continued to recount this part of the story. A few months after his birthday, Philip bought a plane ticket to London to make amends. He booked an expensive hotel suite, and also took Carol to a fancy restaurant for dinner. Philip secretly prepared a ring to formally propose to her, but Carol remained silent the entire time. She wouldn't even touch the champagne in her glass. This drew the attention of the female waitstaff around them. Philip became the center of attention. His cheeks burned with embarrassment, and his throat felt dry. He kept pleading with Carol to say something, but she only looked down. Frustrated, Philip slammed the table, and then Carol immediately stood up and left. The restaurant fell into silence. Only the clattering sounds from the kitchen could be heard. Philip sat there feeling utterly humiliated. The restaurant staff wanted to waive the bill, but he insisted on paying.
I didn't want their pity.
No, because you could provide your own.
Philip kept talking about how sad he was. He didn't pay any attention to Carol's condition at all. The assistant angrily responded that she wouldn't drink because she was pregnant. The father was a one-night stand from the orchestra. In fact, the smart assistant is the virtual representation of Carol's daughter, Kelly. Its programming integrates Kelly's thoughts and perspectives. It's responsible for helping the owner select appropriate content to include in the memorial service. This way, Kelly doesn't have to go through it herself.
Why didn't you say?
You said skip the intro.
The smart assistant said that Carol rarely talked to her daughter about the time they were together. She also hadn't been with the one-night stand. That incident was only because Philip had been unfaithful. It was a mistake caused by Carol's momentary recklessness. Kelly had only seen her real dad 4 or 5 times, and was raised entirely by her mother. After the restaurant proposal incident, Carol wrote a letter to explain to Philip. However, the latter said he never received it. Philip rummaged through the box and found the last item. It was a disposable camera. He originally planned to take a few photos around the city after proposing, but it never got used at all. Philip suddenly remembered that the camera hadn't been completely unused. He immediately went out to get the film developed. Inside was only one photo of the hotel floor. It was evident that the room was in disarray. Carol had taken her suitcase, and Philip had vented his frustration by throwing things around the room. The smart assistant optimized the photo and found a note on the floor that said "Little Phil." This was likely that explanatory letter. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Philip tried, he couldn't pick up the letter. He remembered that he had gotten very drunk that night. The hotel maid came to clean the room and piled the things in the corner. Philip hadn't looked closely at that time. He is now desperately searching. Sure enough, he found the note in the pocket of the hotel manual. Carol explained the reason for the hotel's awkwardness in the note. She hadn't expected Philip to propose. Suddenly, she was also worried about the fetus in her womb, and didn't dare to answer, so she froze in place, not knowing how to react. That one-night stand was just a childish act of revenge. Carol still hoped to continue with Philip, but she didn't want to have an abortion. The letter said that if Philip wanted to talk, he could meet her at the theater entrance after the afternoon performance tomorrow. However, Philip had never noticed Carol's condition. At this moment, he pulled out the sheet of music he composed. Accompanied by the music, he transcended time and space and returned to the entrance of that small apartment. As the music finished, Philip finally remembered what Carol looked like, but she was gone, and everything couldn't be relived. A new story is about to begin. Before the story begins, let's briefly outline the worldview. In the future, a company launched a brand new immersive experience game called Infinity. Players can enter space exploration through brain-computer interface. However, the technical director, Dave, exploited the software to create a replica universe just for himself. He also secretly collected the DNA of his colleagues to create digital clone versions of them. No matter if they were the company owners or department managers, everyone that Dave couldn't stand had to quietly stay in the enclosed universe and be his slaves. However, several clones had had enough of Dave's abuse. They banded together to destroy the DNA samples, piloted the Callisteer and escaped through a wormhole from a system update. They were transported into the official Infinity game, but to their surprise, as soon as they entered, they were labeled as bugs by that universe, and began to forcibly delete the existence of the clone universe. The consciousness of the technical director, Dave, was erased, thus declaring him completely dead. Although the big boss was finally eliminated, the situation for the digital clones wasn't optimistic. Because they lacked player IDs, they faced pursuit and blockade from 30 million players. In this game world, launching a spaceship required a large amount of credit coins. In order to gather funds, the digital clones began to rob and kill everywhere. After all, these players wouldn't really die. At most, they would just lose levels and log out. But for the clones, this was not a game. They didn't have a second life to reload from a save. One day, Captain Nanette revealed that she could bleed while robbing credit coins. Ordinary users and NPCs wouldn't exhibit this condition, so the green-haired player thought they had used cheats. He was about to report them and get them banned.
Who are you reporting? No player tags.
No.
After being forced to log out, the green-haired player shared his experience on the game forum. He found that many others had encountered characters without player tags that were robbing them. The programmer Cameron rushed to find his boss, Walden, to report the bug he discovered. Little did he know that his clone version was one of those anonymous robbers. Boss Walden didn't take these reports seriously, and was in a hurry to meet with a reporter from the New York Daily. Walden was eager to take this opportunity to show off. After all, he held all the power of speech since Dave's death. However, the reporter also mentioned that players frequently complained on the Infinity forum about being robbed by anonymous users, and there were also incidents of bleeding. It's important to note that Infinity has always prided itself on having no bloody scenes. Walden didn't want to get caught up in this issue any further. He explained that it could be due to anonymous users installing the patch. These were all minor issues. The reporter pulled up the surveillance footage from before Dave's death. The footage showed a DNA digital cloning machine on the table. The reporter suspected that Dave used this to create conscious digital clones of real people, and that he copied them into the game to satisfy his perverse fantasies. Walden warned him that if he dared to publish a single word, he and his lawyer would make his death a terrible one. Little did they know that the entire conversation had been overheard by the real Nanette. This was when she realized why she had received a pile of nude photos she had never taken, and that she was threatened over stolen DNA samples from Dave. It turned out it was because she was very likely to be cloned. Walden wanted to have Cameron catch the anonymous users, but the other party had put a note on the screen, resigning. Nanette volunteered to take Cameron's place. She pleaded with Walden to give her unrestricted access rights. In the game world, Captain Nanette detected that a solo player, the little sprite, had logged in. She immediately instructed her teammate Bob to go rob him. The two split up to approach the little sprite. To their surprise, this user had overwhelming combat strength. Captain Nanette was almost killed in return. In a critical moment, Bob launched a surprise attack from behind, and took out the little sprite. Unexpectedly, the little sprite player kept respawning and chasing the two. At the same time, the teammates on the spaceship weren't making things any easier. They randomly pressed the buttons on the captain's chair, sending invitations to other players. It's too late to retract now. Normal players quickly arrived in their fighters and began bombing. Captain Nanette and Bob were being chased by the little sprite. They hurriedly ran into the teleportation portal, and had their teammates bring them back. However, as soon as they returned to the spaceship, they found that the ship was under attack. Captain Nanette quickly positioned herself with the credit coins, and activated the warp drive to escape. The little sprite, infuriated from being robbed for no reason, immediately went to the game website to complain. Coincidentally, this information was seen by the real Nanette. She opened the game footage uploaded by the little sprite, and immediately recognized that the robber looked just like her. The other was the company's intern, Bob. Nanette quickly sought out Walden to report this. She claimed that the anonymous user was her digital clone. Moreover, she had received a threatening phone call beforehand. They had stolen all the DNA samples from Dave's house. Included was Walden's sample as well. However, the digital Walden in the game died when crossing the wormhole. However, the current Nanette didn't know many details yet. She investigated the IP address of that phone call. She found it was routed through a version of Infinity on a computer, which matched Dave's address completely. This meant that the reporter's guess was correct. Their digital replicas were now roaming within Infinity. Walden was dumbfounded by what he heard. Cloning technology is banned worldwide. If exposed, the entire company would be finished. He immediately dug out Dave's old computer for Nanette to examine. Indeed, they found cloning data inside. She searched for the specific locations of those cloned bodies through the digital stream. In the digital world, everyone was tired of living like mice, constantly fleeing. They were gathered together, brainstorming for a solution. The clever Captain Nanette thought that there must be a special development version of Infinity on Dave's computer. If they could obtain the game's source code, they could create a private development version, allowing them to create a universe that entirely belonged to them. To achieve this, they had to go to the engine at the heart of Infinity, in the center of the universe. However, only 2 people in the entire company had access to the core. One was the deceased Dave, and the other was Walden. Unfortunately, the digital version of Walden had died. Now they could only seek help from the real Walden. Digital Cameron immediately rebutted, "We are illegal clones under his company. Once our whereabouts are exposed, federal agents will have Walden imprisoned, so we can't rashly contact him." Just then, the blonde man suggested, "Why don't we check out the digital Walden's room?" Captain Nanette was stunned after hearing this. When we passed through the wormhole, the spaceship had reset itself. Every survivor present had been assigned to a generic living area, and Walden had been burned to death before crossing over, so he shouldn't have a private room. But now there was an extra lounge. This meant that when the spaceship passed through the wormhole, there were still remnants of Walden left behind. It could have been a tiny piece of nail or minuscule atoms caught in the spaceship's wake, traveling with us through the wormhole. No matter how small this fragment was, it was enough to allow him to be reborn as a new player. And new players are assigned to the newbie village. At the start of the game, everyone immediately went to search for him. Captain Nanette quickly encountered the digital Walden, who had devolved into a wild man, on the starting planet. He was very happy to hear he could return to the spaceship. He also wanted to bring his good friend, Alan, with him.
Rocky's got a hole in the back.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
At this moment, the real Nanette also arrived at this starting planet by tracing the information flow and encountered her digital version. Next, for clarity, we'll refer to them as Digital Nanette and Real Nanette. The 4 of them returned to the Kali Star together. Digital Nanette explained her thoughts. She hoped that Walden could help grant access to the core, but Walden immediately launched an attack, because only by eliminating the hidden threats of these digital lives could he feel safe. The blonde man sacrificed himself heroically to protect his teammates. Without player IDs, once they died, they couldn't respawn. Enraged, Digital Nanette rushed over and shot Walden dead. Real Nanette followed suit and logged out of the game. She kicked her boss. Dissatisfied with his inhumane actions, she packed her things and prepared to leave. Walden, fearing the exposure of his secrets, hurriedly stepped forward to block Real Nanette. He tried to bribe her with money. At this moment, a car suddenly came and knocked down Real Nanette. Digital Walden approached Digital Nanette, claiming that entering the core was not that simple. 12 years ago, Walden was just a wealthy slacker, holding a large trust fund. He began investing. It was under these circumstances that Walden met the genius programmer, Dave, and he was impressed by the game Dave was developing. The two hit it off and prepared to make Infinity bigger and stronger. At that time, Dave had designed only 4 planets. Walden thought this was far from enough. At least 50 planets were needed before the game could be released, but designing them manually was simply too slow, so Walden asked Dave to write a routine program to automatically generate planets. However, even so, Dave needed to check each one individually. He simply couldn't handle it all by himself, and for confidentiality, he couldn't bring in any other helpers. Then Walden had a brilliant idea about the DNA replicator. This was also one of the products he invested in. However, it couldn't be released due to opposition from the outside world. The machine was designed to replicate humans in virtual reality. With just a strand of hair and a bit of saliva, it could replicate at will. If a clone of Dave could be created in the code and merged with the engine, Digital Dave could work around the clock, residing in a time bubble. So the heart of Infinity housed Dave's clone. He was trapped inside, constantly generating the game universe, and Real Walden would go to any lengths to protect the secret. Digital Nanette was worried that Real Nanette was in danger, and sought to contact the outside world. She unexpectedly learned Real Nanette had been in a car accident. She was now in a state of brain death. In desperation, Digital Nanette ordered Cameron to set a course for the heart of Infinity immediately. The spaceship soon arrived at its destination. Digital Walden used his fingerprint to unlock the access. Only one person could be transported in at a time. he couldn't help but remind Digital Nanette to be careful. Dave held supreme authority inside. The next second, Digital Nanette entered the heart of infinity and saw Digital Dave inside. He was diligently crafting planets. His mind and experiences were stuck years ago, so he seemed very easy to get along with. Digital Nanette explained her purpose. Hoping to create a universe that belonged to them. Unexpectedly, Dave offered another option. He snapped his fingers and instantly hacked into the hospital's surveillance. Because real Nanette was brain dead, Dave could transport Digital Nanette's consciousness into her body. From then on, she could live in the real world, but the others on the spaceship would be doomed. Because when they were transported into this universe, Digital Nanette's code had already merged with all the crew members. If she wanted to save herself, she would have to sacrifice all her teammates.
So what's it to be? Save you? Or?
Digital Nanette chose to save the crew. Dave chuckled. This is just a test. I knew you would save the crew. But there is a third option, to save everyone.
You said you couldn't do that.
I know, I had to pretend like I couldn't so we could roleplay the whole space fleet thing together.
Since Digital Nanette had already made her choice, Dave immediately began copying and pasting. Hearing this, Digital Nanette quickly intervened. If you send the crew's copies to the new universe, the originals will still be left here to suffer. Dave replied, you don't need to worry about that. Even if those people are in danger, it won't affect you, because I want to keep you here with me. Dave had been trapped in the core for years, working year after year. He had always wanted to find a companion to keep him company, since he couldn't leave the core, or the entire game universe would collapse. Now that Digital Nanette had come to him, he certainly wouldn't let her go. Dave sealed Digital Nanette's mouth, not wanting to hear the sound of refusal. At the same time, an incident occurred on the spaceship. Real Walden learned from Cameron where the Force log-off players had died. They would respawn at the same location after rebooting. So, Walden re-entered the spaceship, knocked out Digital Walden and took his place. He quietly approached the control panel, and sent invitations to all players in the network. Bob came over to ask what he was doing. Bob immediately realized this was the fake Walden, but unfortunately, the invitation had already been sent out. Walden quickly logged out of the game and disappeared into the spaceship. All the robbed players were preparing to take this opportunity to get back at the main characters. The Callistar immediately made its escape, but the vengeful players were numerous. Under their strong bombardment, the shields of the Callistar gradually began to disintegrate. In no time, it fell below the threshold. They were forced to fly towards the heart of infinity. At this moment, Digital Nanette looked around, picked up a toy from the ground, and threw it. Unexpectedly, it hit Dave right in the forehead. This caused the source code that maintained infinity to die. The entire game universe began to collapse. Digital Nanette hurriedly looked for the hard drive containing their data. The shield level of the Callistar had dropped to 0%. Another attack like that, and they would be finished. In a critical moment, Digital Nanette pulled out a hard drive and hurriedly plugged it into the outdated computer. A powerful surge of energy burst forth from it. It nearly engulfed the entire game universe. The next second, Real Walden found that the computer suddenly blue-screened, and error code 606 appeared on the screen. He asked Cameron and learned that this meant the entire game and its backups had been deleted. The Infinity game was completely gone. When the crew awoke, they found everything drenched in blood red. As Hospital Nanette came to, the crew's vision started to clear as well. They had unexpectedly entered Nanette's body along with Digital Nanette. At this moment, everyone's consciousness had to share one body. Nanette became, in another sense, the Callistar. Soon after, Walden was arrested on suspicion of multiple offenses. Maria is a professional food researcher and developer. Her boyfriend, however, works at Barney's Fried Chicken Shop. He always wore the funny hat of the shop all day long, and kept thinking about quitting his job to go on a vacation in a different place. Maria didn't have the time to go abroad with him, and was devoting all her efforts to developing a new product, the Black Fruit Bar. Today, the company would hold a tasting session to decide whether the new product could be launched on the market. Maria and her assistant sat outside the one-way glass nervously, secretly observing the reactions of the tasting members. Unexpectedly, a familiar-looking woman walked into the office. She is Maria's high school classmate, Verity. Judging from Maria's reaction, Verity has changed a great deal compared to her school days. Before Maria could come to her senses, the tasting session started. This new flavor wasn't very popular this time, and some people even bluntly said that it tasted terrible. Just then, Verity asked for another piece. While eating, she touched the necklace around her neck and then said, the new product was the type that tasted better and better the more you tried it. You should try a second piece. It's definitely 10 times better than the first one. Following Verity's suggestion, everyone indeed discovered the deliciousness of the new product. Hearing this, Maria finally felt relieved. Unexpectedly, she met Verity again in the restroom. She pretended to have just recognized her, and exchanged a few words of greeting. Verity, however, said that she had applied for the position of research assistant in the research and development department, and believed that she would soon become Maria's colleague. Upon hearing this, Maria said, "Are you mistaken? Our research and development department isn't hiring. You might have seen it wrong. I know very well about the situation of the research and development department." She didn't want to waste any more words with Verity, and left on the pretext of something. Maria opened the company's website, and found that they were indeed hiring a research assistant. She immediately went to ask the supervisor about it. The latter explained that it was to expand the team and also told Maria to work hard. The boss will come for a tasting on Thursday. If nothing unexpected happens, you should get a promotion. After Maria got home, she continued to search for information about Verity. She couldn't help complaining to her boyfriend that Verity was a weirdo at school. She was so smart that it seemed a bit strange, and she just stayed in the computer room every day. Although she was a genius in information technology, her social skills were zero, and she didn't care about her appearance all day long. She was often bullied by the other children, and there were even rumors that she had an affair with Mr. Kendrick. There was a girl named Natalie Kane. After hearing about Mr. Kendrick, she always called Verity the milkmaid. Later, this nickname spread throughout the school. Maria couldn't figure out why someone who studied computer programming would come to apply for a job in a food company. Sure enough, Verity came for the interview on Tuesday. Her resume surprised the supervisor. Verity studied at the University of Cambridge, majoring in molecular biochemistry, and because of her interest in food, she also took a catering course at Oxford Brookes University. She was more than qualified for the position of an assistant, so Verity successfully joined the research and development department. Maria couldn't help talking to the supervisor, hoping that he would think about it again carefully.
She was just a bit, odd.
Although the supervisor thought that Maria was making a fuss, since they had worked together for many years, he still promised to conduct a background check. The next day, the supervisor met Maria in the elevator. He bluntly said that he had checked Verity's employment history, and there was no problem at all, then asked Maria not to make things difficult for Verity anymore. The new product to be perfected today was the dark chocolate-filled soft cookie from Maria's main series. Verity was there to record the selection of ingredients. Maria was a bit hesitant when choosing the gummy adhesive. Originally, the test used halal gelatin, but Maria remembered that the boss didn't eat beef, so she carefully replaced it with pure, plant-based carrageenan. Unexpectedly, at the crucial moment, Maria forgot how to spell carrageenan. She told Verity, "I will send you the entire ingredient list by email. You can just check it then." After that, Maria used the email document correction function to find the correct spelling of carrageenan. While Verity and the others were talking about what to have for lunch, the bearded man suggested going to eat at Bernie's Fried Chicken. Maria casually corrected him, saying that it was called Barney's Fried Chicken and that her boyfriend had worked there. "He still wears the baseball cap of the shop, so I can see the logo every day." They wouldn't give in to each other and had a fierce argument. Finally, Maria suggested searching for it online. Unexpectedly, it was indeed Bernie's Fried Chicken. This made Maria feel very embarrassed.
Feel the burn.
She went home unwilling to admit defeat and checked the hat. Unexpectedly, it also said Bernie on it. Maria couldn't help suspecting that it was Verity who made her feel so distracted that she remembered the name of the fried chicken shop wrongly. Her boyfriend had heard her complain about this high school alumnus frequently in the past few days and couldn't help retorting to Maria, "Do you have a prejudice against her? Do you think Verity is threatening your status as a popular person?" Maria was very angry after hearing this. She had a few words with her boyfriend, and then went to find Natalie's contact information. The chat record between them was still from 4 years ago. Maria asked Natalie if she had time recently to catch up, but the text message she sent was like a stone sinking into the sea, and she didn't receive a reply. The boss came to try the new product on Thursday. He spoke highly of the dark chocolate-filled soft cookie, and also specifically asked about the recipe. Maria introduced that the marshmallows were removed, and only plant-based gelatin was added. However, Lily, the maker beside her, looked very unhappy. After seeing off the happy boss, Lily then said that they used halal gelatin. The supervisor was a bit angry when he heard this. "The boss is a Hindu, and you actually gave him beef to eat?"
I said carrageenan.
That wasn't on the list.
I was specific.
Well, it wasn't on Verity's list.
Verity's list.
Maria immediately called Verity over and asked the supervisor to determine whose mistake it was. However, Verity firmly said that the email sent by Maria stated halal gelatin, and that she had never heard of carrageenan.
Please stop shouting at me. I am not shouting.
You've been raising your voice.
Maria had an argument with Verity. The supervisor said that they could check the email to find out who made the mistake. Maria clearly remembered that she had written carrageenan and opened the email record with full confidence. but she found that the original word had been changed to halal gelatin. She really couldn't swallow her anger, and rushed into the supervisor's office, claiming that Verity had tampered with the email. The supervisor thought that Maria was being unreasonable. He angrily said, "If you can't regulate your emotions, go home and take a few days off before coming back to work." But the more Maria thought about it, the more something seemed off. She told her boyfriend that Verity was a computer genius, and must have used some means to tamper with the email. Her boyfriend didn't believe this statement. Maria was about to argue a few more words, when she received a reply from Natalie. However, the one who edited the text message was Natalie's husband. He said in the letter that Natalie had passed away a few days ago. Her boyfriend asked Maria to reply with a text message, to offer some words of comfort. But the other party called immediately. Maria was convinced that Natalie's death was related to Verity's reappearance, so, without considering the feelings of the family members at all, she kept pressing to ask how Natalie had died, and whether Natalie had met Verity before her death. Although Natalie's husband felt offended, he still replied that she had committed suicide. In the weeks before her death, she hadn't been very clear-headed, and accused everyone of lying. As for the name Verity, he had never heard of it. Maria wanted to ask a few more questions, but Natalie's husband ran out of patience and hung up the phone. Her boyfriend couldn't understand why Maria was so impolite, and got up and left in disappointment. The next day, Maria gathered herself together and went to work. Unexpectedly, the office was empty. After a while, Verity appeared. She asked Maria why she hadn't gone downstairs for the meeting. There was a group meeting at 8 o'clock this morning, and everyone had received the email yesterday. Maria hadn't received the message at all, and guessed that the email might have been put into the spam mailbox. After some hesitation, Verity asked Maria if she had any issues with her.
I mean, I know you didn't think much of me at school.
I didn't think anything of you at school, Verity. I hardly even noticed you.
Verity said, "You must have heard the bad things said about me and Mr. Kendrick. When I was at school, only he was kind to me. So after the teacher was transferred away, I had nothing." Maria advised Verity not to be trapped in the past. "You had a hard time then, and I'm sorry about that." Verity thanked her with tears in her eyes, then opened the cabinet, took out her colleague's almond milk and drank it all in one gulp. During this time, she kept staring at Maria, and her gaze was chilling. Just then, the others finally finished the meeting. Maria explained she hadn't seen the email and thus missed the meeting. The supervisor didn't blame her either, but just reminded her to pay attention next time. Then the female colleague picked up her almond milk, and asked who had secretly drunk it. Since everyone had been in the meeting room for the meeting this morning, they all focused their eyes on Maria.
Okay, it was Verity. She drank the whole thing right in front of me.
Why are you doing this?
Because you are a fucking freak.
Okay, enough.
Both of them identified the other as the one who drank the almond milk. Maria said speechlessly that she was allergic to almonds, and it was impossible for her to secretly drink someone else's almond milk. The supervisor suggested going to the security room to check the surveillance footage. Just then, Maria noticed that Verity would touch the necklace around her neck. Every time she spoke, the next second, the image in the surveillance footage suddenly changed, showing that Maria had snatched the almond milk and drank it all up. She retorted in disbelief, "I'm allergic to nuts. It's impossible for me to drink this kind of thing." Unexpectedly, neither the supervisor nor the security guard understood what nut allergy was. Maria opened the computer speechlessly to search for it, but found that the word had been erased and she couldn't find it at all. Maria saw that Verity was pinching the necklace, and realized that there was something wrong with the pendant. Then she rushed over to snatch it. The supervisor quickly stopped her. Verity deliberately smiled at Maria, to provoke her into making more out-of-control actions. Maria had to be suspended from her job for a while. Of course, she couldn't swallow her anger, so she hid downstairs in the company, and followed Verity to a luxurious manor. She looked everywhere for a side door that could be opened. Unexpectedly, Verity suddenly passed by the balcony on the second floor. Maria walked into the blind spot of the line of sight, then she wrapped her hand with her coat and smashed the door. Almost breaking her hand, Maria found a stone to break the glass, and reached in to turn the door lock. At this moment, the music in the room was extremely loud. She passed through the huge computer room on the first floor, and carefully went to the second floor. Unexpectedly, Verity just walked into the bathroom. Maria quickly searched for the necklace and finally found it on the table. She gently touched the pendant with her thumb, but there was no special reaction. Footsteps soon came from the bathroom. Maria quickly got under the bed. Verity sat on the bed and wiped her body. Maria continued to study the pendant, but accidentally made a sound. Verity seemed to have noticed. She put on her bathrobe and asked the person under the bed to come out. Maria had to get out from under the bed, holding the pendant. She said, "I already know your secret." Verity said calmly, "This thing requires fingerprint recognition. It's useless even if you get it. And the pendant is just a remote control. I have a bunch of spares. What really works is the quantum compiler downstairs." Verity explained that the compiler couldn't change reality. It just readjusted our body frequencies and switched to a parallel reality. there are infinite timelines in the universe. There, Barney's fried chicken can be Bernie's, and carrageenan can become halal gelatin. I can switch any timeline at will, and only keep you in the original worldview. After Verity finished speaking, she took out the pendant and showed it, making Maria's short-sleeved shirt turn red.
停下来，我不在乎，你他妈的疯子！
Verity did all these things to punish Maria, because the rumor that she had an affair with the teacher was made up by Maria in order to please Natalie. At this point, Maria had to plead with Verity for forgiveness and said, "You already have such a magical device. You are more than qualified to be a queen of the universe." In fact, after Verity created the compiler, she did try all kinds of successful lives, but the insults and pain from her school days still lingered. It took her 5 weeks to make Natalie break down, but unexpectedly, she managed to deal with Maria in just 5 days. Verity was thinking about how to end her when Maria suddenly rushed over, grabbed Verity's head, and hit it hard on the ground. Verity struggled to break free from the suppression, but unexpectedly, Maria hugged her arm and bit it. She turned around and kicked her away, then picked up the pendant on the ground and gave the order, "Your boyfriend calls the police and says that you're crazy. You broke into my house with a knife, and will be arrested by the police soon." As soon as she finished speaking, this order became a reality. However, Maria didn't give in easily. She snatched the police officer's gun and shot Verity dead on the spot, then she randomly shot at the police. Taking advantage of the chaos, she grabbed the finger of Verity that was holding the pendant and shouted, "I'm the owner of this pendant." Maria successfully broke through the fingerprint restriction. With this magical device, the 2 police officers became her servants. Maria controlled the timeline and said, "I want to be the queen of the universe." She completely turned the situation around and became the final winner. And we will start the next story. Amanda is an ordinary primary school teacher. Today is her and her husband Mike's wedding anniversary. They plan to go to the Juniper Inn where they went when they got married, to relive their previous happy memories. Over the years, the small inn had remained the same. Even the taste of the signature hamburger hadn't changed at all. Even the chewing gum on the top of the room was still in the original position. Amanda's mood was a bit complicated. For so many years of their marriage, they had always wanted to have a child to break this monotonous life, but every attempt ended in failure. On this day, Mike went to the construction site to work as usual. His young employee, Shane, was slacking off again. He had been obsessed with a website called SillyNet recently. Desperate people would go on this website, and then the audience paid them to do stupid things. As long as you were willing to pay $200, you could make the users who wanted to make money on it drink urine. Mike had no interest in these disgusting deals, and devoted himself fully to his work. But an accident happened suddenly. Amanda fainted during the class. After the examination in the hospital, it was found that there was a tumor in her brain, and the best treatment time had already been missed. Amanda might never wake up. The doctor said that there was only one feasible solution now. There was a startup company that had launched an experimental treatment. Although the risk was high, Amanda's situation wasn't optimistic, and there might be no other choice. Mike quickly got in touch with Gaina from the company, and learned from her that Hersey is a transformative force in the neuroscience field. Its working principle combines high technology and convenience. They will copy the affected part of Amanda's neural structure and clone it onto the mainframe, then remove the tumor in the surrounding tissues, replace the removed part with synthetic receiving tissue. The Hersey system will transmit the cognitive functions to the patient's new brain tissue through the backup on the cloud server. This process sounded very dangerous, but Gaina said she was one of the first people to receive the surgery. She experienced a terrible accident 18 months ago, and was able to survive thanks to the Hersey system. Of course, this surgery also has side effects. First of all, the patient's sleep will increase by 1 to 2 hours compared to usual, which is to meet the needs of the server. Secondly, her body cannot leave the signal coverage area. Fortunately, the Hersey system has already covered most parts of the state. It will also be promoted nationwide within the next year. Since the product is in the early testing stage, the surgery is completely free, and only $300 per month is needed to maintain the streaming service. Mike didn't hesitate and immediately agreed to the surgery. Amanda also successfully regained consciousness. The doctor said that she could go home next week. Mike didn't tell Amanda about the Hersey system until she was completely stable. When Amanda heard about the monthly fee of $300, she was worried. This amount of money isn't a small sum for their family. Mike told his wife not to worry. He would increase his working shifts and cut expenses. Mike began to work from dawn to dusk. Amanda had also been trying hard to manage the family expenses. The two struggled to hold on for a year. Their life was filled with various bills, and there was no happiness at all. Mike saw the date of June 5th on the calendar, and realized that it was their wedding anniversary again. The two decided to splurge a bit, and go to the Juniper Inn to spend their anniversary. But they quarreled about money on the way. The poor material conditions, coupled with the heavy workload, made both of them harbor resentment. The more they quarreled, the fiercer it became. Amanda actually closed her eyes and fainted instantly. Mike quickly turned around and prepared to go to the hospital, but the next second, Amanda regained consciousness. The two went to Gaina for consultation. The other party pointed out that there was no need to worry, and you just went beyond the coverage area, and Hersey is upgrading the signal towers, and soon the whole of North America will be covered. However, they must upgrade to the enhanced version to enjoy this treatment, otherwise they can only stay within Palmer County. Mike hurriedly asked how much the upgrade would cost. Unexpectedly, Gaina said that they needed to pay an additional $500, that is, $800 per month. The two of them definitely couldn't afford it, so they decided to continue using the ordinary version. But Amanda gradually had problems. Small advertisements actually began to appear in her mind. For example, on this day, when Amanda was explaining the process of bee pollination to her classmates, an advertisement for honey promotion suddenly popped up in her mind.
Whole grain chunks covered in golden Tupelo honey. Honey Nugs from Dita.
This situation is just like the mobile phone software, forcing you to subscribe to VIP to get rid of advertisements, and Mike soon realized this.
Hoping for a hard time? Try Manville Erectile Dysfunction Gel.
As soon as it dawned, Mike dragged Amanda to consult. Gaina explained that in order to expand the service, they had to accept the advertisement implantation, and all these pieces of information are carefully designed, aiming to be relevant to the context, and fit the scenarios where the users are. In this way, it won't seem out of place during conversations. Of course, if you want to turn them off, there is still a way. Just pay more money to upgrade to the enhanced version of Hersey. The two decided to endure it in order to save money, but Amanda's behavior has already caught the attention of the school. She always involuntarily promotes various products to the students. The principal warned Amanda that if she couldn't stop this behavior, she would be fired. If Amanda lost her job, they wouldn't even be able to afford the subscription fee. For the ordinary version, Mike didn't want his wife to bear so much pressure, so he thought of that silly net. He mentally prepared himself and logged into the website. In order to retain the last bit of dignity, Mike also found a mask to cover half of his face. After he received his first payment, he immediately helped his wife upgrade to the enhanced version. Amanda was very happy when she heard this. She didn't notice that her husband was cleaning the stinky wine glass. The monthly fee for the upgraded version was like a bottomless pit, and the perverse tastes of netizens were getting harder and harder to satisfy. There were even people offering a price to make Mike put his tongue on the mousetrap. He worked so hard to keep their life going. But Amanda became more and more sleepy. At the most extreme time, she could sleep for 12 hours a day, and this kind of sleep made her extremely tired. Gaina explained that when the user is in sleep mode, our server will use your idle processing power to supply electricity. That's why Amanda felt tired. The two were very angry when they heard this. We paid for the enhanced version, and it should be better than the ordinary version. Gaina said that was natural. If you switch back to the ordinary version, you will sleep even longer. If you don't want this kind of sleep that feeds back to the server, you can pay more money to upgrade to the Hersey Premium version. The Premium version can not only make the brain function normally, but also enhance sensory abilities and regulate emotions. It costs an additional $1,000 per month. Gaina understood that this wasn't a small sum of money, so she proposed that even if they didn't subscribe to the full-time package, they could also buy the temporary auxiliary version and try it for a few hours or a few days. Mike saw that their wedding anniversary was coming soon, and he opened the silly net again. This time, the netizens asked him to take off his mask and put his finger into his body, and they increased the price to an amount that couldn't be refused. Mike reluctantly did as they asked. The next day, he excitedly gave his wife the 12-hour premium version. Although the time was short, Mike hoped that she would have a happy anniversary. Amanda activated the premium version and adjusted the pleasure value to the maximum. The next second, her whole world changed dramatically. The food became more delicious, and the music became twice as beautiful. Unfortunately, happy days were always short. 12 hours passed in a flash. The two left the hotel and went home. Mike went to work early, but his workmates pointed at him and whispered all the way. He was feeling puzzled when he saw the screenshots of his live broadcast last night pasted on the wall of the office. Mike immediately thought that it was Shane's doing, and rushed over to punch him. The pent-up anger of several days burst out all at once. His workmates quickly held Mike back, and Shane was still taunting. Unfortunately, he was run over by the truck behind. Mike was implicated in this incident and lost his job. The couple went to Gaina to plead for mercy, hoping that she could give them a few more days. If things continued like this, they would have to use the baby fund. Gaina immediately said that if Amanda got pregnant, her brain would change and she would need to process more information, so an additional $90 would be needed per month. Mike flew into a rage and left with his wife. In the blink of an eye, another year passed. A new round of their wedding anniversary arrived. Mike sold the baby crib to scrape together the money for the festival. He also wished the young couple good luck in having a baby, but they said that they bought it for shooting an MV, and were going to set it on fire. It can be seen from Mike's missing teeth that he once pulled out his teeth on Sillynet in exchange for money. The money from selling the baby crib was only enough to buy the premium version for 30 minutes. Mike adjusted Amanda's tranquility value to the maximum. The latter became very relaxed.
It's time. Do it when I'm not here.
Mike knew that his wife couldn't hold on any longer. The 30-minute countdown was about to end. Amanda started to randomly recite advertisements again. Mike endured the pain and pressed the pillow against her head until Amanda lost all sounds. Then he picked up a paper cutter and walked into his computer room. This loving couple met their demise because of a system, and a new story unfolds accordingly. Laura, a rising star in the film industry, found the female boss of the veteran film studio Kivos Pictures. She wanted to persuade the boss to remake the former classic The Dream Hotel. This romance tells the story of the renowned Dr. Alex Plummer meeting the tragic heiress Clara Rice. As the love between them grew stronger, Clara's vicious husband was secretly plotting to kill his wife and seize the inheritance. Therefore, it became a classic in the film and television industry. The female boss certainly also wanted to remake it, but due to her limited funds, she simply couldn't afford to hire big-name stars. Laura said, "You don't have to worry about that. We've developed a new technology. It only takes 96 minutes of the actor's time to finish filming the movie." The popular movie star Brandy had received numerous film offers recently, but she hadn't found a script that interests her. Brandy was already tired of the vase roles, and didn't want to be a foil to first-tier male stars anymore. She loved the black romances of the old era, and wanted to act in some real art films. Upon hearing this, the agent suddenly remembered that they had indeed received the script of The Dream Hotel recently, but the producers wanted a male actor to play Dr. Palmer. Brandy was very interested when she heard this, and asked her agent to inquire with the production company whether the male lead could be changed to a female. Since both the female boss and Laura didn't have much money, it was already a great thing to have Brandy on board. They immediately changed the male lead to a female. After confirming her participation, Brandy watched The Dream Hotel again at home and also opened the video of the female star Dorothy auditioning for the role of Clara. In that scene, she was required to pretend to make a phone call, but since there was no one speaking on the other end of the phone, she couldn't help laughing during the performance. Brandy was also infected by the smile in the video. However, she accidentally saw the news of Dorothy's death. It said that she was found dead at home not long after filming The Dream Hotel, and the cause of death was an overdose of sleeping pills, and the video also mentioned that her affair with a male actor in the same crew had caused a great stir. Just then, Brandy received the documents sent by Laura, which contained materials such as the script. Brandy accidentally dropped the USB drive in the bag on the ground. So, when she went to the filming base on Monday, she was very confused, because there were no other actors there except her, only a group of tech geeks and a room full of computers. Only after Laura asked did she know that Brandy hadn't seen the data package. The female boss had only rented the venue for 3 hours. There was no time for too much explanation, so Laura was going to explain while filming. The Rebirth of Old Dreams system developed by their company would capture the movie and all its related materials, including the script, casting tapes, sample films, everything. Then it would create a fictional space. As long as Brandy's consciousness was placed in it, the movie could be filmed conveniently and quickly. After Laura finished speaking, she put a hypnotic device on Brandy. When Brandy regained consciousness, she found that she had entered the movie world. Before the opening theme song was played, people and things other than her would be in a stagnant state. All Brandy needed to do was to memorize the lines well, and grasp the rhythm of the story. If the plot development deviates seriously from the story arc, I will ask you to exit the program. Laura asked Brandy to sit at the table with the newspaper. After 90 seconds, the credits would be shown. Remember that for the characters in the play, this is the real world. These characters would think that Brandy is Dr. Alex Palmer. They are artificial intelligence constructs. They only know the parameters of the story and the names of the characters, and they won't think it's very outrageous that a black female doctor appears in 1940. After the opening theme song started, the people in the restaurant came to life instantly. Not long after, Clara appeared. Everything was just like in the original movie. Clara wanted to find a seat to sit down, but was refused by a noblewoman with a dog. The doctor played by Brandy quickly invited her to sit together, and then went through the lines according to the script. Clara's husband, Claude, worked in the Rice Holdings company left by her father. He was a real kept man. There was no love at all between the couple, and Claude had already instructed the bartender to poison Clara. The poor woman was completely unaware of this. Looking at the silent piano in the distance, she took the initiative to talk about her favorite piano piece, Moonlight Sonata. At this time, the doctor played by Brandy should play Moonlight Sonata to increase Clara's favorability. But the problem was that Brandy couldn't play the piano.
Oh my god, she's doing chopsticks.
Narrative integrity failing.
The piano performance was the beginning of the events. In the original work, the beautiful music made Clara choke with emotion. She walked out of the hotel and cried, and the doctor followed her and went out to comfort her. Clara should have left before the poison wine was served on the table. But now, the piano playing was so bad that it didn't move her to leave. The poison wine was about to be served, so Laura could only ask Brandy to pour the wine out on purpose. Brandy's unreasonable behavior caused Clara's favorability to drop sharply. She put down her wine glass and prepared to leave. In order to ensure that the story continued, Brandy immediately got up and chased after her. Unexpectedly, due to her nervousness, she called out the name of the actress playing Clara, Dorothy. Brandy carried on with the performance bravely and said, "You remind me of a person named Dorothy. In the eyes of the world, she has everything, but deep down, Dorothy is melancholy." This passage resonated with Clara instead of the piano performance. The two naturally sat in the garden and talked, and the favorability rose back to the passing line. Clara also said new lines. The female boss was very surprised when she heard this. "Didn't you say that the characters don't have autonomous consciousness?" The tech geek explained, "Our AI of Clara is derived from Dorothy Chambers' original performance. The actress incorporated her own life experiences into her acting, so there are echoes of her everywhere in the dataset." When Clara heard her real name, she connected with her true self, Dorothy, so a new dimension was formed. When the technicians developed the system, they didn't take this into account. But fortunately, the story was going smoothly and the second act had already started. Unexpectedly, troubles came one after another. The noblewoman's pet dog ran over and drank the poisoned wine. Now, the storyline was completely messed up. It should have been that the noblewoman accidentally drank the poisoned wine, and Inspector Ravi came to the hotel to investigate, and asked the doctor to sign the death certificate. And the doctor saw Inspector Ravi sneezing and diagnosed that he was allergic to his own cologne. This paved the way for the scene where the police rushed in at the end. In the final scene, Ravi recognized the doctor as the one who diagnosed the allergen, so he told his policeman not to shoot. But without the event of the noblewoman's death from drinking the poisoned wine, in the final scene, the inspector wouldn't recognize the doctor and would shoot at the two protagonists. This was a big plot hole. The female boss asked the tech geek to let Brandy exit and reshoot the scene just now. But the expansion of the character Clara caused a stack overflow, resulting in an exception in the exit code, so Brandy couldn't exit before the end credits were shown. If the machine was forcibly shut down, it might cause Brandy to suffer from catastrophic synaptic failure. Since there was no way to exit now, they could only negotiate with Brandy again. Laura explained, "We have some technical problems. You must act according to the situation and push the plot forward. Find the right moment to say the last line to Clara, 'I will always belong to you.' In this way, the credits can be triggered, and you can leave the program smoothly and return to reality." 10 minutes later, the second scene started. Clara was going sightseeing, and the doctor volunteered to be the tour guide. Unexpectedly, an accident happened again. Before the doctor could speak, Clara invited her to go sightseeing together. The character actually showed subjective initiative. Fortunately, it didn't affect the plot development. Next, there were several montage shots showing the beautiful scenery of Cairo, and the two beautiful women touring together. After the sightseeing trip ended, Clara accidentally sprained her ankle. The doctor took the opportunity to help her into the hotel, and then the atmosphere gradually became more intimate, until the bartender broke the ambiguous atmosphere, and brought a bucket of champagne with ice, which triggered the second murder. A poisonous scorpion approached Clara. After the doctor discovered it, she covered the scorpion with a wine glass and completely won Clara's heart. The people outside the monitoring screen were watching with great interest. Unexpectedly, the tech geek knocked over the coffee, which spilled all over the mainframe. The whole system went completely black, and the movie world also froze instantly. Brandy tried to talk to Laura but couldn't hear any sound. Clara was very puzzled. Due to her panic, Brandy forgot Laura's warning and told Clara that all of this was fake and that she was just a character in the movie. She could see that Clara didn't understand, so she picked up the fruit from the fruit plate and asked whether Clara could see the colors. "Don't you realize that this is a black and white world? Or think carefully about whether you have any childhood memories. Do you remember what your parents look like? I called you Dorothy before, because you are an actress named Dorothy in real life." Brandy told her everything. Clara couldn't accept it for a while, ran upstairs and refused to come out. Brandy chased after her to the outside of the door, and carefully explained the whole thing. She also confessed, "I'm not a doctor, but an actress named Brandy." On the other side, the technicians were trying their best to repair the system. Now, although the story was forced to pause, the time in the system was still advancing, and was much faster than in the real world. 1 second outside was 6 or 7 hours inside. After thinking about it all night, Clara finally accepted the reality. She was going to go out to relax and told Brandy not to follow her. Clara walked on the still street. Somehow, she was attracted by a door. She tentatively reached out her hand and actually passed through the door panel. The tech geek instantly noticed that something had broken through the perimeter just now. At this time, Clara summoned up her courage and walked behind the door, entering a virtual black space, where she came into contact with the complete data pool. She remembered Dorothy's real life. It turned out that she didn't like the male actor she was acting with at all, but was in love with a small script supervisor in the movie. But in 1940, Hollywood actresses had no right to choose at all. The male actor in the same crew pestered Dorothy, which made her involved in scandals. In the end, she chose to end her life. The troubled Dorothy left the data pool. Now, there were only 2 living people in the hotel, her and Brandy, and they inevitably had to face each other day and night. Brandy was gradually attracted by Dorothy, and fell in love with this unique soul. They spent countless nights together in the movie world, and the calendar pages turned one after another. Brandy was almost forgetting her previous life. Just when she was indulging in it, the tech geek finally repaired the system. Laura told Brandy, "We've solved the technical problem, and are going to reset the scene of the poisonous scorpion. Once it's reset, Clara will forget anything that happened after the save point." Before Brandy could react, the timeline went back to the night of the poisonous scorpion. Clara forgot the days and nights they had spent together, and became a monotonous character again. Brandy performed the whole scene numbly. During the break, Laura told her, "Now, you just need to let the story arc continue. Say the last line at the right moment, and you'll succeed."
What if I don't say it?
What?
Laura told Brandy not to talk nonsense. "If your consciousness is trapped inside, your physical body outside will die." Brandy forced herself to return to reality, and continued to immerse herself in the next scene. In this scene, the doctor accidentally heard that Claude had damaged the railing, and was preparing to make Clara fall off the building to her death. She immediately ran back to the hotel to warn her. However, Clara didn't believe that her husband would commit murder. Next came the scene where Claude caught the two in the same room. However, due to the error in the subplot of the poison wine, the new screenwriter came up with a way to fix it. First, instead of having the doctor have an argument with Claude, let her rush into the police station across the street, and tell the inspector that Claude was plotting to murder his wife, then trigger the point of cologne allergy, so that the inspector can remember the doctor's appearance. In this way, the story can get back on track. After hearing this, Brandy thought this method was feasible, so she pushed the plot forward according to the new script. It smoothly progressed to the scene of the last premeditated murder. Claude tricked Clara onto the rooftop, and lured her to approach the railing, but was discovered by the doctor, who arrived in time. She stepped forward to wrestle with Claude for the pistol. But Brandy was a woman, and her strength was much less than that of the original character. Claude actually pressed her against the railing. In the critical moment, Clara picked up the pistol and shot her husband dead on the spot. Everyone was stunned instantly. Claude was dead. At this moment, the police had heard the gunshots and rushed over. Given the situation, they could only let Clara go to prison for love, and end the story with a tear-jerking tragic scene. Although Brandy knew that this was just the world in the play, she just couldn't bear to let Clara go to prison. She snatched the pistol and planned to take the blame herself. Unexpectedly, when Clara saw the police approaching, she snatched the pistol back and shot the inspector. She was also hit in a vital part by a bullet. Brandy rushed over and hugged the dying Clara. Enduring the grief, she said that classic line,
"I'll be yours."
The ending theme song played, and the credits slowly scrolled by. Brandy successfully woke up. Everything just now was like a big dream. The remade version of the Dream Hotel was a great success. After leaving the celebration banquet, Brandy received a gift from Laura, which was a phone that could connect to the data world. Brandy made a call through time and space to Clara, who was having an audition. "I didn't expect the quality of Black Mirror Season 7 to be surprisingly good. After all, sci-fi series have become overwhelming in number. Most ideas that can be conceived have already been filmed. But this time, each of the 6 episodes had its own focus, the life of continuous paid upgrades and subscriptions, a genius girl seeking revenge after suffering from school bullying, a sad romance of falling in love with a virtual character while stepping into a movie, and a madman obsessed with digital life, an elderly person picking up old love in his memories, and a continuation of the virtual game story from the previous season. Each episode had its merits, and they all resonated with our real world. Overall, it's definitely worth watching.